a brand new welcome center, the Seahawk Shuffle, and Sujit Truths. Fascinating thing on space planning and management today. I have the distinct pleasure of welcoming Sujit Chemburkar to talk about his experience at the University of North Carolina Wilmington campus that is a 20,000 student enrollment population, and they have a beautiful coastal area of campus that they're constantly embracing and working on. So, Sujit, welcome to Bowtie Tuesday. I can't wait to talk to you today.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it as well.
Sujit, you've had a long career in higher ed, but it's been evolving. So you went from managing student centers and events, you worked in facilities, and now you're leading space planning for UNC Wilmington. Tell me about that career journey and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. And I think one thing I've learned as I settle into this space planner role is that I don't lose sight of the importance of the venue, of the facility. And having been the person that's unclogged toilets in a student union building, I was a student building manager. I was the person that did activities and did movie nights. I have not forgotten the importance of the space. And
Hmm.
so sometimes when we're looking at data, we're thinking about numbers. It's easy to forget that there might be a student that meets their significant other in the hallways. There might be two faculty that bump into each other and decide there's a research opportunity that leads to a big grant. I never want to forget that those interactions happen in the venues that I'm thinking about from a capital perspective or a project perspective, that's really important. And so I've never lost sight of those things being important for the community that takes advantage of the venues and the spaces and the buildings that we're helping lead in size and scope with our space planning data. And so I think bringing that operational expertise, I'll sometimes raise my hand when I probably shouldn't, thinking about from a facilities operations question about, well, how is housekeeping going to do that? Or how is that going to
Right.
not have enough storage for tables and chairs? That's not going to functionally work. And we need to change that number a little bit. But having run those buildings, I think it lets me bring in that experience and expertise to the space planning process.
Oh, I love that. It just shows how you're thinking it through, right? In terms of like what's the ultimate outcome here and who's going to be impacted by it and how are those student outcomes going to
Yeah.
ideally improve, right, with these adjustments. Oh, that's
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah, we try
Um,
and put equal emphasis on process and outcomes, so the big picture as well as the details.
Great. All right, so let's just kick it off. There's been so much that you've been working on in your career around space planning in the higher ed sector. We just wanted to dive in and sort of hear your perspective on things.
We have a number of buckets at the university that space planning helps with. We're kind of data folks, and so we've got access to our scheduling software, which is EMS through Accruent. We use Banner for scheduling kind of the courses, and we do extractions out of that. And we have AIM at the university for our space profile software, but it also does our work orders and our billing for the whole university. Space planning itself as a department doesn't own any of those databases. We're just power users. And we're
Hmm.
looking to make sure that there's consistency between all three databases. So workstation headcount is always kind of a thing that we're trying to verify and send people out in the field to take pictures. And so kind of keeping up with the databases is step one. We generate a lot of reports for the system office. We get tagged and called on to do like the NSF science grant for all of our square footage and spaces on campus. We try to help the university make data-informed decisions about space and capital projects and stewardship and allocation. So if you're moving people around, we look to our databases and say, you're using those offices at about 85%, so you've got some flexibility there, or we need to kind of shuffle some folks around campus. So we use our numbers to help us make those informed decisions. We do all non-academic scheduling in academic spaces. And so all like student org meetings that show up in our reservation system, my team processes those for the academic side of things. So I've kept a foot in the event and conferencing world because of that. So
Nice.
that expertise has been helpful. And then those are kind of the big things. We manage the policy for space allocation at the university. So I have an executive committee on space, which is all the vice chancellors and the chief of staff. And I bring forward requests for them to kind of decide. I try and get to yes on quite a bit of projects. So I'll bring to their table and say, here's the request. And we're trying to just make it happen. And this is my recommendation. So manage that group.
Nice. I love that. Lots of hats, lots of stakeholders, lots
Yep.
of data, which is good, and then trying
Yep.
to get to yes. That's a key one.
That's right.
Space is one of the most political, high stakes topics on any campus, right?
Sure.
Everyone has an opinion about it, and the decisions are expensive when you get them wrong. What are some of the biggest challenges you face in space planning right now?
When I got here, I started realizing that there are a couple of truths that I kind of claimed them, and I let my supervisor know this, but I've got a handful of Sujit's truths that I talk about. But it's no one on campus has space and everybody else does. And I keep telling people that's kind of an oxymoron. We can't have both things be true. And it's like Wilson looking over the fence and tool time, everybody's kind of looking at space. Well, they're not using their space. We could use that. And I keep trying to say, don't do that. Just ask what you need, and then we process. We work it through. I think remote and telework are real options. They're inequitably assigned at the universities I've been at, and different people do it different ways. But I feel like those are really viable solutions for space challenges. And I feel that there's ways to increase level of service to students that are on site, as well as making staff have more flexibility with whether they be on campus or off campus, but it also solves the problem of not enough office spaces. And so I think there's ways to creatively kind of look at remote and telework as a solution. People know when policies and procedures aren't followed. I think
Mhm.
they recognize inequities. And so, if something happens and it's back of a napkin agreement that happens between two leaders on campus, executes a decision, folks see that and see that it's frustrating. And so I try to keep everything above board. I document everything. I go back and come up with MOUs and agreements for shared spaces. And it just keeps everything moving forward in a positive way. Not everybody gets a yes, but, for the most part, we try to find a solution.
I love it. So it's not
We,
like we're not doing this by handshakes and back of the napkin agreements. It's
right.
policies, it's documented, it's fair, it's
Yep.
equitable,
There's
it's
a policy
decided.
for that.
Love it.
Absolutely. I use that a lot. And then we talk about space being allocated and stewarded, but not owned. And then
Okay.
we're also not in the business currently for usage. We really focus on allocation. And so none of my team is at the door clicking counters and saying, oh, there's only 10 people today or nine. We don't really get into that. I think the university wants us to potentially add that capacity down the road to say, not only am I allocating spaces and offices and classes and labs, but then also how is it efficiently used? So I think we're going to get kind of start exploring different options to provide that information for the university. And
Okay.
the typical thing, we tend to look on kind of short-term solutions instead of long-term problems, and so we try to bridge that gap as much as we can.
So going for those quick wins.
Yep. Solve the
Yep.
immediate problem in front of you, hit
Yeah.
that nail and
I
hammer it
love it.
back down
Yep.
versus looking at, hey, if I move this over here and this over here, things will
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Each mile
It
marker.
is.
You're just trying to do
Absolutely.
one more mile.
That's right.
How do you handle conversations when a department says we need more space, but your data is kind of showing a different story?
I'm pretty direct about it. And so I sit down, I'll throw it up on the projector and let people, well, I'm dating myself, throw it up on the data projector and kind of look at it. I'll send them their data ahead of time and say, we just see the zeros and ones. So we don't understand what anthropology XYZ class is. And so if there's a pedagogical reason that it's scheduled that way with that head count in that space, we don't get that. We just see that it's 15 people in a 30-person class or whatever the example might be. And so I'll go back and sit down and kind of look through that and give them some assumptions from our office and have them then verify and then sit down together and say, hey, what's the problem you're trying to solve? And then can you solve
Right.
it in existing square footage that's already stewarded to your shop? And if the answer is no, then I go to look out and see if I can find a dance partner to say, they need to do this, you need this. Can
Right.
we kind of do some kind of MOU and swap?
One of those Sujit's truths, I bet.
Yeah,
This is how this is
we
going to
try to
work.
get to the wins and yes, yes. I've got a great group of deans. They're
Mm.
fantastic. And the associate deans and the business affairs folks in each of the colleges, they're with me. They're trying to get the yes. And, there's always frustrations with the limited resources of space and budget and the realities of an state institution. So we're all in it together trying to get to the right solution.
Let's talk about what you've seen in terms of an evolution in this world, right? New technology is coming in to help with the
Yeah.
data analytics all the time. Where do you see the role of space planning going in higher ed, over the next perhaps 5 years?
I think it's making sure because when I first started at the university here in Wilmington, we were housed in the IRP office. And since then, and starting in January, we've been realigned and I've now report to business affairs. And the portfolio has changed a little bit to include real estate as well. So I've got real estate and space planning and management under the portfolio and it's brand new. So we're still trying to figure out how everything works together. I think for me, space planning is making sure that we're providing the data to executive leadership so they're making data informed decisions on capital projects, or even something as mundane as taking this small classroom and turning it into a conference room, just so that people know it's data informed. And I think keeping the beat that hammer that there's no good or bad space decisions, it's all space decisions with the pros and cons. Everything's got a weight to it. That's Dr. Andy Mock saying from my supervisor in IRP. And
Oh,
so
nice.
he always said, everything's got consequences and everything's got benefits, and you just have to weigh it out and make sure they make the right decision at the time.
Right.
So I feel like keeping that in the forefront of making sure that universities are making those decisions with as much data informed information as they possibly can. There are so many influences on capital projects, from what can get funded, what the board and the state approves, all the way down to what's needed by each department that would house that space. And there's mismatches and misalignments of trying to connect all those for the consultants and the architects that come in and say, here's the building we're trying to get to. Here's what we can get approved. Here's what we need realistically versus here's what we want. And so trying to scale everything the right way is, I think, where space planning can help out. Yep.
Okay. All right. So tell me about this new Welcome Center project that you guys have been working on. How is that going? What's been going on with that?
Sure, it's an exciting new facility on campus that's being designed as part of the newest master plan, and so that was kind of updated and finalized as I started my career here 2.5 years ago, 2 years ago, and so it's an exciting new amenity to the university that's needed. We don't really have a central intake spot now for campus guests, and so this facility will sit on the edge of campus at one of the busiest intersections, and will help us bridge that need. So there'll be a lot of power users in the facility, from admissions to some programmatic departments to advancement alumni that host events at the university. And it'll have kind of the generic welcome desk, as well as specific departments that are housed in the facility that are greeting future Seahawks, past Seahawks back to campus. And so where space planning has been able to help us, again, scaling it and sizing it the correct way and thinking about operationally how it can impact that part of campus. So it's as used as possible, and is a good solution for our guests coming into the university.
Oh, that'll be exciting, and all of the
Very exciting.
Seahawks branding and the feel good of
Oh
that
yeah, and the
university.
digital
Oh,
screens and the
it's gonna be.
graphics, and it'll have some larger footprint event space and a nice lobby space. It'll actually tie to our major auditorium on campus, so you can imagine the pre and post events that are happening in that
Oh
spot.
yeah.
It'll have decent parking as well, but it'll be a destination to arrive and leave from. And I can imagine, we're still working through details, but if you've got to pick up a map for the university or for the Wilmington area, there'll be some general information provided as well.
I've heard about this thing called the Seahawks Shuffle. Tell me about what that means and how does that apply to space planning?
Sure. And so this will probably be the only time in my career at University of North Carolina, Wilmington, that I've been able to meet multiple departmental needs with one set of moves. And so I kind of branded this opportunity as the Seahawk Shuffle when I went to executive leadership, and with IRP guidance and the leadership there, as well as what our team saw. I sat down and kind of looked at the campus map, and you can probably see it. I got stuff all over the walls and post-it notes and
Yeah.
stuff. But yeah, so I sat down and I looked at that and realized, because of a number of key moves, that we had some unallocated, unstewarded space, and I could meet the needs of research and innovation, the budget office, let's see, advancement and alumni group. There are lots of little moves. Title IX got some new suites. And so I was able to shuffle a number of departments around campus. So I listened to their leadership and I came up with a list of what their needs were. So research and innovation were currently housed in the admin annex, that we affectionately call this building. It's at the edge of campus. And so some of the faculty and staff felt like they wanted to be able to get to it better. So we were able to move them into a building right on the core of campus, and build out some new offices for those fine folks. They're happy. They just did a kind of a reception ribbon cutting thing yesterday, and just all smiles, brand new space, new furniture, new carpet and paint. The space that they vacated was on the first floor of admin annex. Alumni and advancement on campus have been great partners with space over the last decade, as I've researched, and have right sized and moved things around, but had become a little disjointed. And so we were able to give them basically half of the first floor just for them. So advancement alumni have a lot of their offices. They're still in a couple other buildings on campus, but primarily they have a big footprint here in the admin annex. They're happy. Now they're not having to run to telework and run all over campus. They're all in one spot. The space that they vacated allowed the budget office to move out of admin annex into the main administrative building at the university. So the budget gurus are right next to the vice chancellor of business affairs and the other VCs asking money questions rather than, again, running across campus or doing virtual calls. And so we were able to right size people, give them a little bit more elbow room that's appropriate for their function. I couldn't make everything perfect. It's like I'd say 90% happy and 10% still frustrated with Sujit, but that's fine. I'll take that ratio. And so I think everybody is kind of still settling and working out, but I feel like that's probably the only time in my career I'll be able to make these wholesale moves and address a bunch of department needs.
And what do you credit that to? That's fascinating. So you credit it to having the right conversations, listening, putting it all together, looking at it like a master adjustment. What is
Yeah.
the type of data sources that you utilized as well to sort of make those decisions?
Yeah, we had access to the a couple pots of information. We had remote and telework data that we got from HR. Uh, After I consulted with their area vice chancellor to make sure that that was okay, that we got that. Then I had what we call as the space allocation data coming out of AIM. So I was able to pull all those spreadsheets and floor plans and count and head count workstations in the building and say, yeah, it sounds like it'll fit if we move all these folks around.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, if you were going to give advice to somebody who was coming into space planning for the very first time, they're more junior in their career and they're coming
Yeah.
into this world of higher
Yeah.
ed and these
Yep.
discussions and the governance and the data, what is some advice that you might have for someone new in the area?
Yeah, I hired someone into the department that was newer to the field and it kind of and in her younger in her career, and so some of the lessons that I've been trying to impart and teach is that space is political. It's a limited resource on campus, and so there's a certain patience, but also a need of listening and understanding their frustration around space, and kind of owning that yeah, there's a bureaucracy to space sometimes and kind of making sure the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. And so there's times when I slow a process down to make sure the executive leadership knows, the local leadership knows what's going on, and the person going into the space knows what's going on. And
Mhm.
so I'm methodical about that because I don't want someone to feel burned or left out. And I coach them to think through the implications of a space request and how we process it, and then the execution of the decision. And sometimes there are unfortunately, with the limited resources, winners and losers. But I don't lose sight of what the losers lost. I try to make sure that we can try and find in the future or in the next opportunity that their needs are met too. So I document those things. I talk about making sure that we're very relational. So I spend as much time out in the field as I do behind my desk looking at numbers. I think people see that. I try to get ahead of problems by understanding the unofficial conversation as well as the official conversation about space. We're the
Right.
keeper of secrets. And so I tell people all the time, you can call and tell me, hey, I need this kind of space. And that means that this is going to change for another department. I
Mhm.
don't share that. I keep it, but I model it out for that person. So if it might be XYZ Dean, I'll say, here's some opportunities for space in your out currently stewarded spot. Here might be some ideas outside your building you want to think about. That's not your space, but we could find a relationship. But then I keep that quiet. I don't tell anybody. I don't go out and say, hey, they're getting ready to do this. And so I tell them all, my staff all the time, we're the keeper of secrets. We run the numbers, we help model it out, but we keep it quiet until the time is right. And then
Yeah.
we've done all of our homework and we can work with capital and facilities management to execute with the local client.
It's very obvious that you approach your job with a lot of diplomacy, a lot of process, a lot of data, and a lot of care. So, Sujit, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for being part of our Bowtie Tuesday
Thanks for
series.
thinking of me.
Oh, love it. And we really hope we can keep talking and keep sharing your wins. They're fascinating. Congratulations to all the great work you've been doing.
Well, thank you. It's a great team and a great place to work.
Excellent.